Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. Juan O Savin supposed to be joining us here pretty soon. I have my Nino shirt on. All right. So I've been watching events down in Brazil. Now, we know that in Brazil, uh, they had Bolsonaro, who was basically the Trump of South America. And they stole his election, right? And shortly after that, he came out. He came up and met with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. So it was like two guys hanging out that had basically had their election stolen, right? So the people of Brazil, I mean, you know how we had J6, people of Brazil, they took J6 to the next level. Basically, they went into their state house and so forth and rocked it. And they kept begging for the military to come in. Now, Lula, the guy that basically is now in power, is a leftist, right? He should be in prison, but he was let out. Or I think he was in prison for election fraud or something like that. So he came back, during the COVID lockdown stuff. Bolsonaro was like he wasn't for it, and the people, the deep state was like pushing it, and they did all kind of crazy stuff to try to come after him through the court system and so forth. Same thing with Trump, and then of course they had the election. Election was stolen from Bolsonaro, and they're even trying to prosecute him for crimes, saying that it was his fault that the people, just like they did with Trump, that the people, demonstrated and pretty much rioted to get him back in power. So it's the same situation now. What's happening in Brazil right now is their cities, one of their main cities, Rio, is under siege right now. So cartels based from Venezuela are, I guess, a police force came in to, do an arrest and so forth. And there was like gunshots. They had drones. They started bombing the police with drones. And it turned out into open warfare throughout the city. I think well over 100 people died. Now, the reason why I bring this up is I've been talking about how this is coming from American cities, right? So we see the same situation happening down in Brazil that is coming, I believe, for American cities. So, I mean, it was like, I think I saw one time where they were saying it was like 7,000 rounds were being fired a minute, something crazy. And you could hear the automatic weapons going off and tracers, shooting across the city and so forth. Crazy, crazy stuff, guys. All right, so Lula, they begged for military assistance, and Lula wouldn't send it, right? So imagine if Biden were still there, or Kamala were there in the White House, we would probably be seeing that right now in American cities, right? Full open warfare. Now, I think that President Trump has been very proactive and going into some of these really bad cities like Chicago, Portland, and LA. So these cities are some of the worst. Other cities that he's gone into, Washington, D.C., the people there have applauded it, which is amazing to me because in Washington, D.C., it's about as liberal as you can get, right? But the people are applauding it. They're happy. It's for one of the few times in a long time that they've been able to actually come in and walk the streets of Washington, D.C. So President Trump has done a really good job. Another place is Memphis, Tennessee, where they also wanted President Trump to send in troops, and they've done a really good job there. But in these other very strong leftist cities, just like down in Rio de Janeiro, where there's open warfare with the cartels that are funded, like I said, from the deep state Venezuela. So this is the problem, obviously, that we're going to continue to see throughout America at some point. We have Juan. Juan, good to see you. Or
I apologize. I thought I had a great spot for our broadcast, but it wanted to kick back and forth between the 5G and the 3G, and it just wouldn't hold, so I had to move. So anyway, sorry about that.
Well, that's a good spot. That's is that a veterans cemetery there?
It's local. I actually have a friend who was a vet who's buried here. I enjoyed to come here. I remember when he was in his last days, he commented that he had a really nice place picked out. He hoped people would come and enjoy the scenery. He won't be there, but it's where his body would be, and that you know, they think of him once in a while. He had a one of the original Kona coffee stuff. He was in the original group that pushed that whole brand, and he used to give me the king beans. I paid for them; they weren't cheap, but I get the king bean coffee. It was pretty excellent. So, yeah, for people that don't know, the king bean is the last bean on the vine, and it sticks out, and it has the most nutrients. It has the most oil in it. And so for the royalty in Hawaii, they got the king beans for their coffee, and then everybody else got the rest.
Very interesting. I never knew about that. You always bring some interesting information. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on is I heard you talking about Halloween. Oh my God! So I've known about Halloween being a compromise. Of course, when I was a kid, I loved Halloween. When my kids were small, I took them out for Halloween. We had fun with Halloween. But over time, I learned that Halloween is quite evil on many different levels.
It's
so
origins, yeah.
Time.
Well, you know, for example, for people that don't know, it's considered this high holy day for the witches and warlocks and all that sort of thing. It's their most important day of the year. And so they have sacrifices in a lot of the variations. Look, you know, there's a lot of people that are pagans. They're kind of in the gayest stuff, and they want to go back to nature and stuff like that. So there's all different types that celebrate this stuff. And then, by the way, All Saints Day this year is on November 1st. And so it's like this divide against this evil day, and then the Saints Day afterwards for those that are, you know, in the Orthodox and like that. And but you know, Halloween in the sacrifices, all of the month of October has lots of different sacrifices that they do, animal and in some of the more morbid, you know, human sacrifice. And classically, historically, this was a very big deal. And so in order to prepare a sacrifice, you would adrenalize them, scare the wits out of them, because the belief was that, you know, if you go to, for example, in the Old Testament, in the Bible, the priests would eat the meat of the offerings that were sacrificed and then burn anything that they didn't eat, you know, so that there was nothing left. And so if you think of the occult, the devil never does anything original. He's only mimicking what God already does, or, you know, ordains, whatever. And so they have their own variation, where when they're doing sacrifices, they also eat the meat. Well, if they're doing human sacrifice, they're eating human meat. And then you go back and you think about this. Think in the Old Testament. One of the things when the people came into the Promised Land, the Jews, you know, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, came into the Promised Land, they were told not to make their children pass through the fire as the heathens did, you know, the people that they were kicking out. Well, that's a very church way of saying don't sacrifice your children. When they passed them through the fire, the um, uh, Baal, Moloch, this devil, they would literally, in a lot of the literature, it talks about this in ancient writings like that, where they had a bronze statue of, the bull, Baal, Moloch, and it had like a opening on it, like an old potbelly stove, where the stomach would open up, and they had mechanical arms on the sides of this statue, this large, very large statue, and they would place an infant in the glowing hot hands of this, beast, and then it would be conveyed, through, the arms being able to move into the bowel of this bull-like figure, and where the fire was red hot, and so the child would be consumed in that fire. It was a horrid, horrid, horrid thing. When Elijah had this thing in the Old Testament where he went up on this hill where the heathens, the pagans, well, they weren't pagans, the Moloch worshippers, the Baal worshippers, were doing these sacrifices. He challenged them, he because of Israel's sin, he proclaimed a drought, said that it wouldn't rain on the land for some period of time. He stopped the rain. After 3 years, the people are just in a desperate situation, so they're making more offerings and sacrifices to Baal than ever to try and stop the drought. Everybody recognized that this prophet had proclaimed the drought, and so they wanted him to stop it. And he says, "Okay, I'll stop the drought. Let's have a test. Let's see whose God is more powerful, the God that you guys are offering sacrifices to, or the God I'm offering sacrifices to." And he had a crowd that ran with him of other priests and believers and like that, and so it was his camp against the other camp. And he said, let's both build altars for sacrifice, and up on the mountain where you want to do it, because they always want to do it from the high places, and you'll see that in the Bible all the time. The high places is a sacrificial place for the Baal worshippers, if you will, and overlooking the city. You see that in England with the priests and the people, doing their various satanic stuff there. And so they build a sacrifice, one to Baal and one to the God in heaven. And the test is that whoever's God can light their sacrifice on fire, that's the true God. So the Baal worshipers, they've no doubt got pyrotechnics stuffed in with the wood and everything else, and they go up to pull off their illusion, and they couldn't get their fire to start. They're cutting themselves, they're dancing, they're screaming, they're ranting. They're out there all morning. And Elijah is laughing at them because nothing can happen. And so they're going to, do these sacrifices. Then, and they'd been sacrificing children. That was the whole, theme of it. Everybody from the area is there because they're in the middle of a drought, and this is going to be maybe the chance where they're going to get this drought stopped somehow. So they're all up on this hill, everybody from the region, and kind of like a rock concert or something. So then, as the day wears on, Elijah says, "Okay, well, you had your chance. It's our turn." And these guys are exhausted. They're out in the hot sun doing all their stuff. And Elijah says, "First, before we do ours, let's throw some water on it." Well, they're in the middle of a drought. Water's not easy to come by. He has them bring water and douse his offering, his site where they're going to do this big bonfire. And once they do it once, he goes down, tests the wood, looks at, no, not wet enough yet. He doesn't want any question that God did something. And part of the reason was because the priests were proclaiming that, you know, Elijah might have done something to, you know, put pyrotechnics in his sacrifice altar, which of course is what they did. It didn't work. They're trying to figure out how he's going to pull this off with this magic. It's all illusion. And so he has him douse it again. He has the priest check it over, look over his sacrifice altar, you know, make sure there's nothing in there. And he says, well, do it one more time. Well, again, water's like super precious. You know, it's a big bonfire, and they're throwing water on it when they're all, you know, in a drought. But they do it again, and you have to picture that it's the priests of Baal that are helping make sure this happens. The water's down at the bottom of the hill. They had to cart the water up the hill. They're sweating. All their makeup's running, you know, all of their costumes are starting to come unraveled around them as they're doing all this work to make sure that Elijah's offering isn't going to go off. So they douse this thing, and then Elijah lifts his hands and prays, and a lightning bolt comes out of heaven and just completely consumes, like with nuclear heat, this offering. Everybody that's there sees this spectacle, and they immediately realize that it was the God of Elijah, which doesn't want these types of sacrifices, that they've been conned. They've literally been sacrificing their own children to do better, have a good harvest, have rain, whatever. And they turn on the priests of Baal and kill them all. And they're gone. And it leads into a whole big thing with other things that happened around Israel in the months that followed. But the reason I mention all that is that there's this history that's even a biblical history, and including human sacrifice. And in the, you know, even the word Cana Baal, okay, has to do with the fact that these Baal priests would eat the humans that they sacrificed, the children and even adults. Well, within that realm, even down to this day, a lot of these Baal worshipers, Satan worshipers, want to sacrifice humans. But even within the animals, as they come up to their high holy day, they're doing multiple sacrifice days during this harvest season in the fall. And before they do the sacrifices, they adrenalize their victims because they believe that the meat tastes better adrenalized. So they adrenalize them for several days, generally starting 3 days before the sacrifice. Here we are on the 29th today. See, it's 20, no, today's 30. Take it back. I'm off a day. Of October, well, they would be in their second day of scaring the living daylights out of their victims, tormenting them, torturing them. I had a call coming. I apologize. So their bodies are full of adrenaline, which they then taste. You see it in a lot of countries where they still, and in Africa, where they still adrenalize animals before they kill them and eat them in a way. And so you think of sacrifices of humans, Halloween, then or in the world, there's people going, including children, to prepare them to be killed as a sacrifice to Baal. These Satanists still live and operate and function in the world that we're in today, and that's part of the big fight that we're in at some monstrous level. So I don't know if you've heard all of that before from other stuff that I've talked about, Mike, but that's kind of the context.
Yeah, that the jack-o'-lantern, where if they'd given to the priest already and they accepted their their sacrifice or their donation, whatever it might be, whether it's money or children, whatever it was. They would
Well,
put
yeah.
up.
Let me elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So in England, back 400, 500, 600 years ago, what would happen is they had these bands, the groups that were essentially Satan worshipers, druids and that crowd, and around the country, the custom was, and had been for several hundred years, the custom was, in fact, by the way, just so you know, the Romans, when they came to England and were occupying England all the way back to the time of Christ. By the way, in the city of England right now, there's a city within the city, which is the old Roman city, and it's a walled area. It has an old wall of stone built around it. So when you're driving around in England, in this city within the city, where the banking groups all are nestled together, about 100 banks around the world have their offices in there. It's inside the old Roman stone wall. And so that's why we call it the City of London, the city within the city. And to give you an idea how important that city is, for example, when the Queen was alive, and I assume with Charles it's something similar, although I haven't looked to see exactly how they're conducting the ceremony. When Queen Elizabeth was alive, she would have to go once a year to the gate of the old city of Rome within London, take off her shoes, walk through the gate to the Lord Mayor of the City of London, the old Roman city. She would have to curtsy, bow, kiss the ring, paying homage to the Mayor of London. Well, think about that. The Queen of England, of the Commonwealth, she bows and curtsies and kisses the ring of the mayor of a city. Yeah, because that's the true power, and that was where, in that era, the Rothschilds controlled the banking, and that was their city. And so you're paying homage to the true controller. Okay, so that's kind of this power center. But the Romans, when they came into England, in the writings of their generals and their historians, they talk about, and this is well documented, this isn't, just internet, whatever, this has been well documented for a very long time. They talked about the practices of the people there, these druidic tribes in that area, and the grotesqueness and the severity of their ways with what they were doing, including the human sacrifice. So this is, long, well documented stuff. It's not like it just came up, recently, or somebody's, just invented this recently. And that history was that throughout England, where these tribes controlled the various areas, the cities and the hinterlands. And by the way, the Romans were pretty wild themselves. They had the festivals and fairs that were pretty grotesque in their own way. But even they were shocked at how over the top the people there in England were. And what they would do is that they would force everyone to put out everything that was burning. Not no coal that's glowing, no embers that are glowing. You had to destroy all fire. If they found you with fire, you'd be a sacrifice. So everybody had to get rid of anything that burned. And the only ones that would have a flame were the druidic priests. And so for 3 days, you would have no flames anywhere for heat, for cooking, for anything. Some areas it was said it was only 1 day, other areas it was up to 3 days, to make sure that all fire was extinguished. Then they would have huge bonfires during those days up on the hilltops where everybody could see it. Again, going back to the Old Testament, where it was all done on the hills around Israel and around Jerusalem, with these Baal ceremonies, Baal sacrifices, and they would do these huge bonfires and sacrifice animals and people around England. And if you wanted to be warm at night, if you wanted to be, you had to go to the spectacle. And then on the last day, these, and depending on which era, they say for several days, but on the last day, as things matured, these druidic clans would go around every community and they would knock on every door. This is the trick or treat. And at the door, they would be looking for alms. They'd be looking for donations. And at certain doors that have been pre-selected somehow by the priests, they would demand a human sacrifice. And so the person running the home, generally the father, the most senior person, would have to pick someone to give to these priests as a sacrifice. And oftentimes you have to think in terms of an agrarian society, the way that they lived. Every person's labor was important, and the older you were, the more knowledge you had. You see this in war too. You know this, Jaco, that the most expendable are the younger. Why? Because the children can be replaced more rapidly as they get greater skills, knowledge, understanding. They become more critical to your operation, and so children are the ones that go out and clear a minefield. Children are the ones that are sent out to the front with a gun and get killed first. And so generally, the human, if they were required, not every household was required to give a human sacrifice, just certain ones at different times. You might give one and I have to give another one for 10 years or something. The priests made their own decisions. It was generally the youngest in the house, or very young, or one of the women, because they weren't as strong to do labor, etc., as the men were. And so when the priests would take their captive, bind them and take them to the bonfires, they would leave a lantern on the porch, and that would be assigned to any other of these roving groups that household had met its obligation, had made a contribution, and so ignore that house, don't bother that house, leave us alone. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't get that lantern, which was a hollowed out gourd. Today we do it with pumpkins, with a light in it. And by the way, what was the light burning on? As these roving groups would be running around, they would have a dead body, someone that they were pulling, and they would have tied a rope around one leg. And so you see it, for example, in Masonic literature, where you'll see a person with one leg bent at the knee up nearly to the waist and the other leg stretched out. And that's symbolic of this ceremony where you would drag a dead body and by one leg. And as they went through the area, collecting their alms. And if you had given an alm, they would then cut some of the fat out of the body, and they would place that fat in the gourd with a wick, and then light it. And so the fat of the body is what was, you think of oil lamps, you think of things where it's burning something other than the wick itself, which is just a filament, and that's what would keep it burning. And so the body was being drugged for the fat, and they'd be cutting it up piecemeal as they went to light these lanterns to show that they'd gotten their alms. It was think of growing up in that kind of an environment. with that kind of terror even all through the year. Imagine living in your household. Would a parent or someone demand your child or a sibling to be the sacrifice if you ran afoul of a parent who could make that decision, and they decide that this is what we're going to do? I'm going to get rid of this one because I can do it and I have the luxury of having an excuse to do it. The priests take care of it for me. That's the terror within a society, even over the rest of the year. Are you going to be the sacrifice this year? And so when you think of Halloween, you have to understand what this imagery is all about. And today, for us, even if you don't understand that and you're having fun and the costumes and everything else, are we actually doing something that pleases God in heaven? Or are we mimicking and having fun, yet for these people that are behind this, they know that we're celebrating their day, not something of God, right here in our society. And that's part of the thing, is to put funny faces and laughing and everything else on something that actually has very morbid, horrid origins. And does that make sense for us in society today, to continue in that as though it means nothing, when we know that behind the scenes there's still people practicing these horrors even now? It makes it kind of hard to drop your guard on that.
Wow, that's more information to not follow the Halloween tradition. Now, a lot of people say they follow the All Saints Day, but is All Saints Day on the 1st of November?
This time it is. I think it bounces around. I don't really follow that closely, but I know that this year it does follow immediately after on the 1st. And you have different calendars that different groups use. And, if you want to be accurate year to year to have the exact same day, you have to use a solar calendar. If you use a lunar calendar, it kind of bounces around. You have 13 moons in a year. And with the solar calendar, in fact, just so people understand, when we switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, the context was that the first ships had come to the Americas. And the ships that went to South America with the Mayans, Central America and South America, with the Mayans and the Aztecs, they got the calendars, which were extremely accurate. So when you looked at the Aztec calendar, for example, as well as the Mayan, you could calculate out with precision exactly when the eclipses were, certain events would occur. And the Julian calendar was all over the map because it didn't allow for that quarter day. Every 4th year we have a leap year, because as the Earth goes around the sun, it takes 365 and a quarter days to make a full transit all the way around the sun, one full circle. And so if you have a calendar, let's say that's 365 days, you'd miss, every 4 years, you'd be a day behind. You put that out over, 100 years, and all of a sudden your planting and harvest is almost a month out of whack from where the sun is for the heat and everything else. So we have a chicken over here just sat down to lay an egg. Anyway, so the Mayan and the Aztec calendars calculated out the days correctly, the months and the years, so that you stayed on point with where the sun was in its circle, or the Earth was in its circle around the sun. And when the church, the Catholic Church, was able to resolve all of that with their calendars, they realized that they had to change calendars to a new calendar, and the makeup days required to solve their problem were April Fool's Day. So April Fool's Day was the day that was used to resolve the calendar for us here in the West, and that we all run on today, which is the solar calendar, and then we include the leap year. So every fourth year, we have an extra day, which is February 29th. And by the way, there's a reason for doing it on that day. These people were also following the gods, if you will, the Greek gods, and what the goddess of chaos is, her number is 29. And so on the 29th day of the month, every month of the year, on the 29th day of the month, she rules and reigns. And so in their religion, and so if there's going to be calamity, disaster, chaos, or something like that, oftentimes that's the day that it happens. So, for example, the crash of the stock market in 1929 happened on the 29th day, and they will do things with exacting precision to honor their gods that they serve. And the other thing is that so the goddess of chaos only gets to rule and reign 11 months out of the year in a normal year, 11 being the number of chaos, confusion, because that's the day, you had 12 disciples. And when Judas betrayed Christ and then went and killed himself, committed suicide, there was only 11, and the apostles were in disarray, confusion, etc. And so 11 is the number of disarray and confusion. And so in this kind of twisted mechanics of these people that want to do things with some kind they prove or what they choose to do and why. So the goddess of chaos, 11 months out of the year, rules and reigns on the 29th. And then on a leap year, she gets to rule and reign for a 12th month, but it's actually not just 12, it's then 23 straight months that there's a 29 in the calendar that she can do things. So that's why for them a leap year, it's really almost 2 years of their calamity that they like to do, and on and on. So you can go back through history and find where there's certain pings that you go, oh, that was on the 20th, that was on the 20th, that was on the 29th, and then also 29 years, in their calendar, their way of doing it. So anyway, it gets into the weeds pretty quickly, but when you're kind of aware that they like to do things with that kind of calendar precision, you can anticipate windows where they may very well want to do something or desire to do something. And you got to kind of be a little bit more ready for what they might have. They got something for every day of the year, these, people. But anyway.
So I had Leo Zagami
and by the way, let me just add one thing.
All right.
Let me just add one thing real quick before we get to him. 11 is also the number of war, and because Satan's warring with God, if you will, and so when Judas was no longer one of the 12, they were in chaos, disarray, confusion on the 11th day. Well, that's what war is: chaos, confusion. There's no reason, type of thing. So the other number that follows with that is a triple one, 111. And so there is, I've had numerous people that kind of follow this stuff that are all concerned about the Venezuela situation, Ukraine, and 50 other things. And you have every year, of course, 11-1. And then the follow on to that is Veterans Day, 11-11. And the reason that's relevant is because, for example, in the First World War, when King Ferdinand or Prince Ferdinand was killed in the car that essentially started World War I officially, when he was assassinated, the license plate on the car he was in added up to 1111.
Wow.
11, 11, 11, 311s. And when they finished the war, when they stopped the war, World War I, the agreement to stop the war, they stopped the fighting officially at 11 o'clock in the morning on the 11th day of the month, uh, uh, which was an 11/11. And so, why not stop the war at midnight? Why did it have to be 11/11? Because it went with the numerology that all of the players involved in the war, both sides, were practicing. Because that's the other thing that, even you and I talked about previously. Both sides in most all of these conflicts at the highest levels are in on the trick, and they're creating and sustaining these wars, and we're just the cannon fodder for their bigger goals and objectives of creating war and chaos amongst the people to allow them to stay in power. These overlords, these ones that, just like the Queen of England going into the city, within the city of London, for all the world, she was the monarch of the most powerful, largest country in the world, the British Commonwealth. And yet she, in this very, narrowly covered, understood ceremony once a year, has to go and pay homage to the mayor of the city, the banking city within the city that's hidden right there in plain sight. Who's the real power? If that group of bankers and the families that run those banks control the monarch, then they're the priests behind the throne, and that's always the case. All these great powers, Caesar, the Romans, etc. You always have these high priests that are whispering in the ear of the leaders. You have to do this. You have to do that. And from Babylon forward. And it's the priests behind the thrones that are really pulling the strings, not the leaders that you see visibly in the forefront. They're just getting kind of instruction from behind the scenes. So these wars are serving somebody else's purposes to keep things moving and provide a continuous sacrifice of humans even through war. So that's why it's 11/11 is such a critical day.
Yeah, and you brought up another really good point.
And of course,
about
that's
that.
when we honor veterans.
It's usually the children, the young men that are dying in the war. So that's a really good point. So sacrifice. So I talked with Leo Zagami yesterday. We had a really nice talk. He's got a new book out, The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, exposing Jeffrey Epstein and the most powerful Jewish sect in the world. And he calls it the secretive Sabbatean Frankist Jewish sect. And we also, it's funny because you mentioned Roseanne Barr, and Tracy was, contacting Roseanne. It's like, would you like to have a show with Leo? And she, I guess they already know each other. They've been talking before, but she's never done a show with him. So she wants to do a show ASAP, she said. So that's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to watch that. But you talk about these criminals that are basically controlling the world. It seems like this is and they work both sides. It's just unbelievable how much control they have.
Yeah, once you kind of see that you wonder why things happen a certain way and why the wars can't be stopped, and the illogic. Imagine if the Ukraine war had stopped when Zelensky was there at the White House with Trump. They had an agreement. Zelensky came to the U.S. and he was going to stop the fighting. Trump had an agreement with Russia. They were going to stop the fighting. And there in the White House, with no warning, Zelensky turns around and says, well, you know, after talking to my consultants and everybody else, the Brits, by the way, and some traders within our own U.S. military, he says, we don't want to stop. I'm not going to stop until we actually have an agreement. Which Trump was saying, look, you know, we cease the fighting while we work on a peace agreement and work out the details. That could take months and months and months, but we'll just keep working on it. But at least, you know, if all your energy isn't spent just trying to defend or to attack, you'll have more energy to, you know, try to work out the agreement. And in the meantime, you're not destroying everything around you. Let's stop the destruction and work an agreement. And if it takes a while, it takes a while to work out all the details, but that's what we'll do when we stop the killing. When you're losing on both sides about 3,000 people a week, as it is currently, and you think of all the weeks since Zelensky was there at the White House, both sides, and some weeks it's way more. You've had weeks where you lose up to 10, 12,000 people on each side when they get really going. How many people's lives were sacrificed since that time period, and what gain was made? I mean, what territorial gain? How much more infrastructure is gone? That's going to take how many more years for every year of destruction? You're probably really talking 5, maybe even 10 years just to clear out the rubble and start rebuilding the infrastructure. And by the way, Zelensky and crew and his British overlords expect America to pay to rebuild Ukraine. And so the current figures, you know, they were saying it was going to cost 150 billion, then it was going to cost 350 billion, then it was going to cost $1 trillion, and now the current estimates are upwards of $5 trillion. And what Trump had said was that they could pay to rebuild, we'd help them to rebuild, but they do it out of their rare earth materials and other mining that they had in Ukraine, but we'd help them build, they'd pay for it themselves. You know, both sides started this war within this whole thing, and then they want the American people to pay for it. Bullshit. And that's what Trump said. And so, you know, it goes on. But going back, what I love about Leo is that he has an understanding that's outside of most everybody else that's talking. He studied this extensively. He understands the real nature of the beast that we're fighting on both sides. And he ties it all together, the whole Sabbatean aspect of this out through everything, including, by the way, Israel and the Holy Lands and all this other stuff where you understand that all of that is an illusion of who's actually behind this. You know, I see all the people getting, you know, wound up over the Zionists and like that. Well, if you're going to go that route, you have to go further back than that. That's the whole Zionist thing. It's just the Rothschild operation when they went to the British government and got an agreement to let them buy land in the Palestine region with the purpose of creating a reincarnated, reinvented Israel. I call it political Israel. It's not the Israel of the Bible. It's a city of Rome, the city within the city in England, where they went to Lord Rothschild went to Lord Balfour in the British Parliament, and they worked out an agreement for this, allowing the banking people, the money people, the Zionists, these very, very wealthy people to go in and buy land in Palestine from the people that owned it, the Palestinians, with ultimately it becoming the basis for a new country. And so for 30 years, they were buying land in Palestine from 1917 to 47. And then in 47, they declared themselves a new nation state of Israel. And then were recognized in 48 by the UN, a Rockefeller operation. And the rest is history, this stumbling block that was needed. And by the way, this is front and center at the core of everything within the Masonic operations. The whole point is to create 3 world wars, that within those 3 world wars, you bring the world to some climax of conflict between the 3 Abrahamic religions, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Jews, and the other children of Abraham, the Christians, and the other children of Abraham, the 3 great Abrahamic religions, the Arabs. And because remember, Abraham had a child, Ishmael, by his handmaid. And so this is a conflict between, brothers or cousins and half brothers around Abraham, their father. And within the Masonic belief, if you could cause 3 world wars, the last one being the great one, a religious war, then out of those wars, out of chaos of the 11s, remember 11 is the number of chaos, confusion, disorder, war. World War I, World War II, you had to show that double 1, the 11. Out of that chaos comes order, because who steps in to reorganize, get the trains running on time, clean up the streets and make new streets that are precise, north and south and east and west, etc., that have some kind of order. Look at Washington, D.C. The entire city is built around mechanical alignments tied to Freemasonry. And imagery, when you look at it from overhead, you see very clearly all of the imprint of the groups that were there and created it. And so their belief is that they're going to bring us into the Third World War. And out of that, Albert Pike's, his book, The Bible to Many Masons, the book Morals and Dogma, he says, right in the middle of the book, he says, let no one be fooled. The God whom we serve is Lucifer, the light bearer. Okay, so the Freemasonry is dedicated to Lucifer, the light bearer. And then beyond that, Albert Pike says he wrote the book in green ink in honor of the spirit who taught him all the things that he wrote down in the book, because the spirit was green in its presentation. Well, green, what's the relevance of that? For he hid amongst the green leaves of the garden. That's the belief that Satan, Lucifer, the devil, goes by 1,000 names. When he went to beguile Eve, he was hiding there until Adam wasn't around. And then he approached Eve, and then he beguiled her. And he was the green man, because he was camouflaged in the garden. That's why you have the green movement, the, green, everything to do with energy, etc. It's in honor of the green man himself. And they, in their belief, to the world after.
So it looks like we just lost Juan. So that video, that screen share I just had with for you guys with the streets of Washington, D.C. It shows it all, like he says, north and south, perfectly lined up. And then you can see the, basically the Star of David upside down, which is satanic. So there's lots of that in D.C. Of course, the Washington Monument is supposed to be like the penis that ISIS couldn't find from Horus, or was it not Horus? That was his son, but anyway. So they have that going on. So there's lots of corrupt stuff that's going on in D.C. Now, when Juan comes back on, hopefully we can talk about the shutdown, as far as like the government funding and so forth, and how they haven't got funding for the SNAP program. So I think the SNAP program that's coming in is going to be very interesting. So I was just talking about. I just showed a street map of Washington D.C. and it had the Star of David upside down, of course, and then the Washington Monument, like we talked about before, and it was Osiris's. Isis couldn't find his penis, so she put everything together. So she had to make a penis so she could mate and have Horus. So that's what the
penis out of stone.
out of
Yeah,
stone,
which, by
right?
the way, is actually when you think of the AI and machines and like that, silicon life form, a computer, literally the ghost in the machine. It's made out of, it's literally sand. That's what silica comes from, that they make the computer chips out of. And so, in an early metaphor, the idea that the penis is made out of stone, it's the first, pairing of, silicon life with biological life in some ways of saying it. How would you convey that imagery to people who never even knew what a computer was? And by the way, think about this. Satan, Lucifer, the devil has been around for a very long time. He just didn't show up a couple of years ago. So he has, even before the fall, he has knowledge, insight, a certain type of wisdom, even if it's broken, twisted, that is long eons in existence. So the intelligence of this entity is way beyond, what a human would live in 50 or 90 years or 200 years or 1,000 years. And so you think you're going to outsmart it, or it doesn't understand the underlying physics of reality within 3 dimensions and other things. Of course it does. So when you see imagery like this, I think there's a lot more depth to it than at first you might understand, because there's layers to the information or knowledge that are being passed down even in the Osiris tale, where, for example, the thing is, Isis is both the mother and the sister. And so when her sons are fighting, and Set, who's the good son in this flip of Cain versus Abel, the good son kills the bad son. Osiris was considered to be the most evil and wicked of all the gods, and the greatest terror to humans. And Set loved the humans and took care of them in this, Greek god, Babylonian god mythology. And so when Set killed the evil brother, the mother, Isis, you see that name all over the place, goes out. Set spread his body parts around the whole earth, so he couldn't be put back together, because, of course, as a god, if he could be put back together before sunset, he gets to live again, blah, blah, blah. So the mother goes out and finds 13 of the 14 pieces, and she can't find the final piece, a penis, which had been eaten by a fish. Well, if you can find the other stuff, it must be in the fish, it's cloaked somehow. She couldn't find it. So she assembles his body, wires it back together, and is missing a penis. So she fashions a dildo penis out of stone and attaches it to his body, and then has sex with the dead corpse of her son. I mean, how much more gross does it get? And then becomes pregnant, allegedly, because she's a god. And the child that she has is Horus. And Horus becomes the sun in the sky. Literally, they're sun worshipers. We worship the Son of God. Christ said, I and the Father am one. He who has seen me has seen the Father. So God took on human flesh like we put on a coat, and then came and walked among us, and then stepped in our place. He had, the penalty of sin is death. And so someone has to die to pay the price of sin. Well, if you sinned, you die. So when God himself, the only one that could be perfect, without any sin, steps in the way, and then becomes the sacrifice and dies, and then is resurrected on the third day, he fulfilled the letter of the law that a death had to occur. Those that attach themselves are found in Christ, and by faith accept that he died in your place and paid the penalty. The fine's been paid. The law has been fulfilled. God can't, he says the penalty of sin is death. God can't reverse that. He's made a proclamation, a declaration. So it must occur. So then he steps in the way, and it does occur for those that want to have that salvation. It's there for free. You can't possibly come up with enough to pay the price of that penalty yourself. So God steps in and gives you a way out. In this mystery of the Osiris thing, we look as Christians at the cross as this emblem of that crossroads moment where the penalty on each of our lives of sin, separation from God, because it's putting yourself at odds with God to disobey, has been paid. God himself did it in the form of Christ, and a blood sacrifice to death. He himself did it. We can then be free from the penalty of sin. So the cross is this emblem of that moment, that incident, that payment. For the Satanists, the Luciferians, the devil himself, their emblem is this penis, this Washington Monument memorial to the penis of Osiris. Why? Because they believe that within the penalties against Satan, Lucifer, the devil, who was cursed and cast out of heaven, cast down to earth, that the way that they get back to heaven, remember, Satan didn't want to be greater than God. Satan, when he fell, wanted to be as God. The sin of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, was that he was the most beautiful of all creation. He was there in the throne room of God himself. He was the most beautifully adorned. He was, if you look at Old Testament accounts and the way that the commentators have talked about it, his body was a musical instrument. He had pipes that played the most beautiful music as he sang. And that's why you hear people talk about, well, his pipes are cracked, okay? They're broken. It's like the devil himself, when he was cast out of heaven, his pipes were cracked. That's why music is so important to a lot of these satanic operations. And so his very body was an instrument of music. And so when Satan saw how beautiful he was, he looked at himself, pride came into him. And he believed himself to be worthy to be as God, to operate as God himself. And when that pride came into him to be as God, that was sin. And he was cast out of heaven and cast down to earth. And Christ says, I saw you fall like lightning to the earth. So with that kind of in mind, the devil never wanted to be greater than God because there's nothing greater. He wanted to be as God. Here he's cursed. How would you break a curse? The idea of these Satanists, these Luciferians, is that when Satan, Lucifer, the devil, approached Eve in the garden and had sex with Eve, taught her the trick, and she became impregnated, that the child, which was Cain, and by the way, she went to Adam and taught him the trick, and then she was pregnant by two different entities, beings, humans, a human and a immortal. She had two children. Cain was the child by Lucifer, and Abel was the child by Adam. Two different children, two different fathers in the same birth cycle, which does happen. And so Cain's father was Lucifer. And if you look in the scriptures, for those that don't think it's there, Cain is never listed as a child of Adam. When it lists the genealogies, it doesn't include Cain. Now you can have people that did something wrong; they're still listed in the genealogies. But Abel was a direct descendant of Adam. Abel was killed, and then there was Seth, and Seth is our ancestor all down through time, not Abel. And so how would this help the devil? Because God proclaimed a blessing on Adam. He gave Adam and his seed the earth and everything that is in it. And then and that was without any conditions. It was, if you look in further in the Old Testament, in Leviticus and things like that. If you do this, I'll do that. If you do this other thing, I'll do this other thing. God says if you do bad things, you're going to get a bad reward. If you do good things, you get a good reward. But it's the, conditional. When God gave Adam the earth and everything that's in it as an inheritance for his children's children out through eternity, that was without any condition. It's yours. And then he said, I give you authority over everything that creeps and crawls and moves upon the earth. So Adam had the earth and total control over everything on the earth, in the earth, everything that breathes, everything that moves, all the animals, all of the plants, everything, the mineralization. If, Eve was created out of Adam, and so, the rib being taken out, fashioned into another being. Adam said that Eve was bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. And so she was pure human, created from Adam as a co-part of Adam. And, one flesh, if you will, that's the husband-wife thing. And so symbolic today when we marry to operate as one flesh. Not two people anymore, just as Adam and Eve were one flesh. And so the thing is that the devil, if he has a hybrid baby by Eve, now you're torn. God has said he's going to bless Adam, give him ownership over the earth, give him authority over everything on the earth. There's certain things there that God will not reject. He has to follow what he said. He doesn't change the rules midstream. So in this Luciferian mentality, Cain and his children must be blessed by God and have a co-ownership. And they think of themselves as not just merely human, they're more than human, they're hybrids. They're not defective because they're not fully human. They have an advantage. And so this Luciferian theme is that, they're in more modern times from the garden up, past Abraham. They're the 13th tribe. Instead of the 12 tribes of Abraham, they're the 13th one. And that's why you have the 13 royal families and things like that, more than human. And so in their mind, the devil must be, we think of children as a blessing. So if Cain has children, they're all hybrids. They're part human, part Cainite. And that's the mystery of their religion, that via sex, the penis, they win against God in heaven. And so as important as the cross is to Christians at this crossroads, the penis, the ability to impregnate with seed, to grow a 13th tribe that must be blessed by God because they have the blessing that goes back to Adam, plus they have the knowledge and the superiority, if you will, of a father with this ancient knowledge, etc. Remember, when Eve went and the apple or whatever you want to call it was actually sex with Satan, Lucifer, the devil. It's a metaphor. That's why you see Eve with the snake around the tree trunk, the tree as branching out. There's all sorts of metaphors that go to the father, the devil, essentially within all their generations in that imagery. But with the idea that the Cainites could somehow win over Abel, over Seth. It still goes back to the garden. If all the children of Seth are dead, then the only way that God can bless Adam and his seed is through Cain's seed, which is both human and Satan loose for the devil. And so God has to bless the devil. God is caught in a catch-22. If he doesn't bless Cain and his seed, if there's no child left that's a direct descendant of Adam through Seth, then the only way that God can be true and retain his place is in this catch-22. He has to bless the seed of Lucifer through Cain. And that's why wars. Why war right now? Because until the last, and why against the Israelites, the Jews, if you will. As long as there's a child, one child, who is a direct descendant of Adam through the Seth line, then that can be rebuilt and the game is not over. The devil, that's the story of the Georgia Guidestones, to kill off all of humanity. It's at the time that they were put in place. There was about 7 billion people on the planet. So if you kill off everybody but 500 million, which is what it said on the inscriptions of the Georgia Guidestones, you would have had to kill off, think about this, 13 out of 14 people alive on the planet at the time. So the 13 pieces plus the 14th, which is this, group that come through the, penis of stone with ISIS. Remember Podesta had written on his hand 14 with a fish?
That's right.
Okay, well, the 14th piece eaten by a fish, but recaptured. That's what the symbology is. And by the way, that just goes to show you that this crowd, this group, is in very powerful places because he's playing with those metaphors right there in the public.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something ancient that's gone. Those people that believe this way are still around today. And they believe that there's about a billion children that are hybrids of Cain that they want to keep around. And that to be certain that there's no child left with the pure genetics all the way back to Seth and, of course, then Adam, they must kill everyone. And so that's why you need wars. And the only ones right down to, the one left standing. And by the way, let's do a different flip of that. Within the royal families, you have the 13 families that claim heritage back to Cain within their bloodlines. Right to rule by blood, okay? That's how they, they're not geniuses. They haven't gone to the right schools or whatever. They, supposedly are super smart. No, the reason that they're in these royalty positions is because they're born and in their belief system with the blood of Cain within their genetics. And so not merely human, more than human. With that in mind, about 460, 70 years ago, a group in this Arthurian legend become the Knights of the Round Table, otherwise known also as the Order of the Garter. The garter having sexual innuendo. The women wear a garter on their thigh at the marriage ceremony and take it off and throw it out to the other women that want to, find a husband and have children also type of thing, the bridesmaids. So what's this Order of the Garter, the Knights of the Round Table? The 13 royal families would offer up 2 persons, so there's always representation at the table, to represent their bloodline. And then in the modern times, this last period of time up till King Charles, Queen Elizabeth sat at the head of the table of the Knights of the Round Table, the Order of the Garter, and they would meet periodically on ritual dates and do what they had to do to decide whatever they decide. Well, what do they decide? Who's marrying who? Why? If you watch all of the royal families, they always like their horse racing.
Yep.
And in horse racing, it's all about the breeding. And then within the breeding, there's no artificial insemination. There must actually be physical copulation between the horses in order to sire a child. And so within the royal families, the Knights of the Round Table are arguing for position on how the breeding process should go amongst the various children, who marries who. Why was that important? Because in this breeding program that's been going on for almost 500 years, each knight, as they came to the table, was assigned a number as they arrived and became a knight at the Round Table in this breeding program. What number knight, because Prince William has become a knight at the Round Table, what number knight was he when he arrived at the Round Table? He was the 1000th knight.
Wow.
They're very careful on their numbers. Why is that so important? Because in Gematria, the language of numbers, this other language that's done in plain sight, that is a language that is universal. The language of numbers, by the way, is the same in computers, the language of numbers. That's how we can be united and overcome the Tower of Babel. In this language of numbers, Prince William is the 1000th knight. Drop the zeros. He's the one. He is the one. He's the first royal in this entire breeding program to have the blood of all 13 families coursing through his veins. The Merovingians, which came in through Diana, and then the Saxe-Coburg Goths, out of the Black Forest in Germany, by the way, not from England. Those two families, the Saxe-Coburg Goths represent 7 families of the bloodline predominantly, and the Merovingians represent the other 6. So William is the product of this marriage, this breeding program, which was a countdown to the one. That's why Independence Day, the movie, does a countdown till everything synchronizes, and then the attack begins. In this breeding program, from a Luciferian perspective, a Masonic perspective, by the way, the Queen sat at the head of the Freemasons, this men's organization, she sat at the head of it. But within this breeding program, he's the one. And now the attack can begin. And so you'll see over the internet, you can go do some research, all these Hollywood people and business people and everybody else, they talk over and over behind the scenes. Prince William is the Antichrist and the product of all of this breeding. And you'll see through the Masonic movement, a lot of the families, the various names, their names are altered slightly to add up to 666. So, for example, Kissinger adds up to 666. And different other groups, they like to play with their numbers in a basic system, by the way. And so this is a much bigger thing than most people have even thought about, but these people think about it. See, we're just trying to live our lives. I just want to get, snow tires on the car that are safe to drive on icy, wet roads. I want to be able to have hot coffee and something to heat it up with in a few moments. I don't want to have to do a whole fire and the whole schmear. I just want to, watch a football game and enjoy the football game and the contest between people. That's not the way these people are. They never let it sleep. They're driven like Satan himself to complete their mission to take over the world. And within all of that, put their imagery everywhere they can, including where Christians want to wear a cross. They want to, have things emblazoned to remember that they are saved via what happened at the cross. um, uh, that God came and paid the penalty of sin, and therefore they can live eternally in God's presence and be forgiven all that sin through His uh, personal sacrifice on their behalf, if they accept that and believe in that. These Satanists believe that by sex, and they memorialize it with these stones, like the Washington Monument, these odes to Osiris and Isis and Horus, the sun in the sky, that they will live forever, and God can't curse them. He has to bless them equally with the rest of His Adamic creation through Cain. But their path forward is to kill everyone who is not commingled, a hybrid within their way of doing it. And by the way, for people to say, well, I probably got, in all those generations, the seed of Cain in me. There's only a handful of people probably on the planet, almost certainly within the Jewish bloodlines. Everybody's got some Cainite blood in them at this point in time. So at the resurrection, when the Messiah returns, the dead in Christ rise first, and then the living. And they join this army in the sky with the Messiah returning to earth. Nothing said about a 7-year delay and all that. That's just a bunch of, 20th century bullshit. At the time of the Messiah's return to earth, or coming to earth, depending if you're a Christian or the other religions that think He's coming for the first time, they're caught up into the sky. The dead first, everybody in the grave that's dead in faith, looking for the Messiah, and the living. And the living are caught up. One man's standing here, and another person next to him working in a field, whatever, together. One's caught up in faith, and the other one is left behind. At that instant, it says that everyone is changed in the blink of an eye. All of those that are caught up to this army in the sky are changed in the blink of an eye. And a lot of the scholars looking at this and noting this about the genetics, the things that may be in the body, and by the way, they're caught up bodily. They're not just caught up in their spirit. This isn't just a ethereal, misty presence, whatever. The salvation of humanity through the cross is the same as it was for Christ Himself. When Christ was resurrected, He wasn't just a misty, ethereal presence. He wasn't ghost-like, walking around the streets. How do we know that in part? Because Thomas didn't believe the other apostles. Thomas was there at the cross. He saw Christ having the nails pounded into His wrists, pounded into His feet. He saw Christ whipped. He was whipped 39 times. In the Roman belief, if you were whipped 40 times, it was a guarantee of death. So they whipped you 39 times so that you were within an inch of death, but weren't actually dead. And by the way, the immune system in your body has 39 different cataloged responses for every kind of injury, illness, disease, etc. There's 39 different types of immune response. So in Isaiah, it says, by His stripes, we are healed. This is well before, Christ was killed. This is generations earlier in the prophetic statement. By His stripes we are healed. He was wounded 39 times, one for every type of immune system response. When you have people that are sick, it's worth reminding them, by His stripes we are healed. He took the illness, the disease, the injury upon Himself so that we could be healed of that if we believe. And so that's the interesting thing, that what did they know about immune responses in the time of Isaiah, hundreds of years before Christ, yet it's there in the scriptures, and now we know that there's actually a tie to the physiology. So anyway, the thing about these people is that they believe that if they can kill every last human who is not a hybrid, then they win. Satan wins, Lucifer wins, and has to be blessed. His bloodline has to be blessed along with the Adamic promise, the promise to Adam, that his seed would have the earth as an inheritance and have authority over everything that creeps and crawls and moves upon the earth. And then beyond that, it's not just earth, not just here on this prison planet. The future of mankind is to stretch out into the cosmos, in our own planetary system and our own galaxy and in galaxies beyond. The promise to Abraham, who had this dream. Abraham had a dream where God told him that he would have children. He was childless, even in his old age. And that his children would be as the sand of the seashore for number. That his children would be as the stars in the heaven for number. That it would be that his children would be there to praise God, to be a living testimony to the majesty of God, the beauty of God out through eternity. That was Abraham's prayer. Abraham is called the father of the faithful within Christianity, Judaism, and Arabs. Because remember, they claim their heritage through Hagar, the slave girl, who, when Sarah, Abraham's wife, was childless, even in her old age. And Abraham kept talking about how God promised him he's going to have children. He's going to have children, and he believed God, and he wasn't going to believe that it couldn't happen. God was going to do something. So, Sarah, we got to keep trying. And she's like, I'm not gonna have children. I'm an old lady. I'm beyond the age of childbearing. It's not gonna happen, even though she was very beautiful. But Abraham kept trying. I give him credit for that. She says, okay, but look, you can have a child by Hagar, and we'll raise it as our child, a surrogate. And so Abraham's, well, that sounds like an okay idea. She was probably pretty gal, pretty beautiful. And so Abraham goes ahead, does the deed. They have a child. And he figures, well, that's God's promise to me. And God clarifies with him and Sarah that was not his plan. And it was a child by Sarah. And in the New Testament, it even says that it was Sarah's faith, by Sarah's faith, that she ended up getting pregnant and having a child, beyond even Abraham's. But the whole mission, the whole of Christianity, the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Muslims, is that they are children of Abraham. That's why the peace accords that Jared Kushner is working on in the Mideast are called the Abraham Accords, because it's all three religions. And that's why the last war, the war to end all wars, that Albert Pike talks about in Morals and Dogma, written in the mid-1800s, of 175 years ago, in green ink, in honor of the green spirit that taught him all these things, has a war, the third war, between the children of Abraham, of both through Ishmael and through Isaac, and that it's over, who's going to inherit the blessing. And then you come forward all this way to now, and it's the same conflict over and over. It's the garden all over again. Is Satan going to be able to break the curse by God, where he was cast out of heaven, through sex, having a hybrid, and then eliminating all of the siblings that would come through Adam and the Seth line of, why did he kill Abel? Because if Abel's dead and Cain has children, then God has to bless Satan, Lucifer, the devil, through the Cain line. Children are a blessing. Is it clicking? I mean, I said it a couple different ways, but I think people, if you haven't heard this before, or even if you have, you got to kind of do the mental gymnastics. Why are these people doing?
Yeah,
Most of them have no clue. Handful of the top do know. Yeah. So anyway, I'm rambling on there, but hopefully that helps people understand the conflicts we're in right now and why it's relevant.
No, it's great the way you're putting it all together. So it ties all this together. Now, people have been asking, and I'm curious too because of some of the chat in the chat, people talking about the east wing being taken down. Is that part of because he put up the two poles with the flags, basically break a pattern? And is the east wing of the White House being taken down, breaking a pattern as well, or what's that about?
Well, there's a few ways to look at that. Let me first jump back to the Old Testament and to Babylon. Ezekiel was one of the prophets. He was kind of an oddball. It looks like he was so stressed at one point he had a heart attack, couldn't talk straight, all sorts of things. He was still a prophet, couldn't talk, and he actually made little clay models in the street in Jerusalem where people would pass by to go to the temple and stuff like that. And he showed Jerusalem, made these clay blocks to symbolize, the city of Jerusalem, and then showed a siege wall next to it and it being invaded and all sorts of things. Even though he couldn't talk, he did it, modeling. In fact, he had such a hard time talking, get so frustrated that at times he used cuss words, and the cuss words were very well understood at the time. Like we would say 4-letter words, having to do with all sorts of, sexual innuendo and like that. And in his frustration, and that was noted in the scriptures. I've talked about that before in other broadcasts I've done a long time ago. And the rooster crows. And so Ezekiel was caught up in the spirit. And he was able to look over the wall into the Holy of Holies where the high priest and the other priests operated at the temple. And in that area behind the wall, he saw the priests and he saw the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant and that type of thing. But he saw that the priests were turning their back towards the Ark of the Covenant, bending down, showing their ass, their butt to the throne of God, if you will, and bowing to the rising sun. So the priests are bowing to the rising sun. Well, Horus is the sun god in this mythology I was just describing to you with Osiris and Isis and this child of the mother-child, royalty union. Okay, and in that also in this look that he had, we got somebody here wants to make a big noise here, and I don't see him. He's up in the tree, I guess. Anyway, in this situation. I don't know if you guys can hear the rooster by me, but he's going.
Oh yeah, we can hear it. It's cool. Must be part of the show. You've had roosters part of the shows that we've done before in the past.
Anyway, in this vision that Ezekiel had into the Holy of Holies, the area where the priests work, where the people can't go, only the priests could go. The priests are turning their ass to the throne of God, the altar, the Ark of the Covenant, if you will, and bowing to the rising sun, which is this Eastern religion, this Babylonian religion of Horus and Isis and everything else. And then in the Holy of Holies, there's certain you know, uh, instruments, utensils, you know, all sorts of things that, you know, are described in the Bible as being in there, made of gold like that. In the midst of that, there's these tower monuments to the tower god, these pillars to the pillar god. Well, what is it? It's the penis of Osiris. It's the Washington Monument. It's the Ben stone that you see all across Egypt. These memorials of, again, we see the cross of Christ as this crossroads between life and death, death and resurrection. They see the penis, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, as that instrument by having children by Eve of winning against God and winning eternal blessing, if you will, to get out from underneath the curse, to rule and reign with God, because God is no longer able to exercise his will, that Adam would receive his blessing in perpetuity, authority over the earth and over everything that creeps and crawls, moves on the earth, except that he blesses Satan, Lucifer, the devil, through Cain as the inheritor of those blessings also. And then Satan rules and reigns as a co-equal of God in heaven, no longer under the curse, because God can't curse him because he has to bless Satan's seed through the Cain line. And so these penises, these tower pillars, are in the Holy of Holies behind the scenes there in the temple in the Old Testament. Now you move forward to modern times, and all of their actions are built around those types of themes, where they continue to memorialize that, because that is the devil's way of winning over humanity and putting them in plain sight in all the major cities. Even Saddam with Baghdad was built around Masonic imagery, just as Washington, D.C. is. Same thing as Paris and other places with all this Masonic imagery, which isn't really just so much that it's Masonic, it's actually this Osiris ancient religion, Luciferian religion. So I got sidetracked when you asked me on the question there a second ago, and I wanted to finish that thought. Say the question again, and I'll try to re-say it.
Yeah, the east wing of the.
Oh, east wing. Yeah, there we go. So the deal is, in the east wing, see the rising sun is what? In the east. Okay. So a city built around Freemason imagery and illusions has certain import within these classic things. When Trump brought the army in on the 250th anniversary, and here's something that's almost virtually unknown anywhere. At the same time the army was there, you had military troops in street clothes going into the Treasury and moving everybody out of the Treasury building while they did certain things in the Treasury and recaptured control of the Treasury. In ancient Rome, the Temple of Saturn was the most important temple within the Roman system. And the Temple of Saturn is where they minted the coin of the realm. All the Roman currency was minted inside the Temple of Saturn. Right. And it was blessed and had certain markings that had all sorts of meaning. Think of our money today. Our money has all sorts of secret hidden imagery on it that are iconic, that have certain meaning within their system. And so our current Federal Reserve money has all sorts of things that are on it. You're carrying the talismans of the cult in your pocket everywhere you go, your purse. You're using it to transact. And what are you transacting? You take your life energy, gift from God, and you exercise it in this world and the physical world. And then you trade your life energy for scrip, for fiat currency. It has no value of its own. You know, the paper isn't worth hardly the paper it's printed on. You know, the ink in is printed with. Yet you ascribe a certain wealth value to it of your life energy for an hour's labor, a day's labor, mental or physical. And all these talismans are attached to it. And then you trade with that within their religion. The money is printed in a temple. Okay, the Federal Reserve is a temple. And the Treasury is a temple. And you have a fight. Well, what Trump is doing, he is in a war. The biggest war literally within the country is who's going to handle the currency, your life energy moving forward. Is it going back to constitutional minted coin, gold and silver, or is it going to be owned by these globalists, these federalists? You see, the Federal Reserve is part of an international reserve system. It's not just our U.S. Treasury; it's global, run by the banks of the city within the city in London, and then with agreements going into Switzerland and the Basel agreements, things like that. And so when Trump had troops go in and take over the Treasury, at the same time that the troops were taking over Washington, D.C. symbolically, then he has 2 flags erected on the White House lawn. Mm-hmm. And those 2 flags, east and west, he's taking the high ground in the swamp. And then he had security fencing put around the White House, and he had security fencing put one other place, the Treasury. Treasury, yeah. It was symbolic. It wasn't that anybody was jumping over the wall to come to the White House. He was letting everybody know. He didn't protect the Federal Reserve. In fact, he went on attack against Powell and the Federal Reserve, made a huge stink about it, still is doing so right now. And the big question, even with the interest rates and things like that, is who's going to control your life energy and the way you transact it. Even if you mint something, and or, you know, if you think of the Treasury side, and your life energy is backed by real gold and silver, you can trade it with a receipt for that, which is what Kennedy did. Kennedy issued the silver certificates, and he was going back to Treasury operation. That was a Treasury note. Treasury note, the silver certificate. And it was taking power from the Federal Reserve. The currency at the time, the coin, was a pure, 999 silver dollar, Kennedy half dollar, and all the other currency. It wasn't diluted. And when Johnson came into power, his handlers that helped him get there, within days of coming into power, he called back all the silver certificates and stopped printing the silver certificates at the Treasury and had them destroyed. And if you still have one, it's not tradable in the normal way. It has collector value, but that's it. That was to return control of your life energy back over to Federal Reserve, this private banking organization that, is no more federal than Federal Express, run out of Puerto Rico, along with the IRS. Office is just a few blocks apart. IRS is a private organization also, no more federal than Federal Express. May have federal employees administering it, but the actual core operation is not. It's administered by the U.S. Treasury, but it's not actually a Treasury operations run out of Puerto Rico. So anyway, that's the fight that we're in. Well, the East Wing is us taking control.
Before you do that, Juan, somebody just put in there, I remember this too, this is really good. It was Executive Order 11110. In their face.
In their face. See, it's, well, and by the way, let me just add this. That's a great note to just add one more thing. For example, 17, the Q number. Both sides in this great cosmic battle that we're watching here across the world, both sides want to own certain numbers. Right. So, for example, 17, which is 17th letter of the alphabet, is Q. 17 means victory. The 17th book of the Bible, which even the Satanists, the Luciferians, the Masonic crowd, want to own these numbers and own the Bible itself as like some core theme or whatever. So the 17th book of the Bible is the book of Esther. And what's the book of Esther about? You mentioned Roseanne a few minutes ago. It's about the boomerang. Everybody had a plan. The enemies of the Jews who were in exile in Persia. You had people that were in exile of the Jews. You had people in exile of the Arab groups and all that. They all wanted to be in a power position. And so Haman and his crew, families, decided that the Jews were a threat to them being in full power behind the throne and usurping the power of the king. The king was a drunkard. And they got the king to sign a decree that they would have a free-for-all day out in the future to kill Jews and take all of their property. And it was a date certain, and the king's ring, his signet ring, was used to seal that. Well, Haman had control of the ring, the power of the king to do anything. The king's a drunkard. He's got a bunch of wives. He's got, a harem girl house. I've done shows on this, and they're out there. Esther finds out that this is there by her uncle, Mordecai, and that all Jews are supposed to be killed on this day. Well, she's a Jew, but she's never acknowledged that. She's in the harem girl house. And so she has to decide, is she going to protect her people, of which if it becomes known that she's also a Jew, she would be killed? Or is she going to stay silent and try to hide while everybody else gets killed? So she does this thing where she puts on a couple dinners and everybody gets drunk. The king's there, and then at the end of the second dinner, she explains to him that Haman was going to have her and all of her people killed. The king didn't even know this decree existed, didn't understand whatever it was when it was done, and now he's beside himself. And in a turn of events, he has Haman hung on a hangman's device that he himself created. It's just outside behind Harem Girl House. And in those days when they meant hanging, it was literally stick a spike up their ass and then hoist them up high and let them slide down on the spike until they finally die. They can be over everybody dying and everybody gets to see them. And that was the symbology. And then there was still this date that had to occur where there was an all-out fight. So the king can't reverse a decree. He's beside himself, doesn't know what to do. And Mordecai says, well, you can't change the decree, but you can amend it by adding to it. And so he adds to the decree and says that the Jews have the right to arm themselves and to make alliances before this date. And so they do just that. They make alliances, they arm themselves, the date comes, and it's an all-out, free-for-all. And at the end, the Jews win over Haman's crew, family, etc. All 10 of Haman's sons are themselves hung, and says they're killed in one breath, in the same breath, is the way the Jews tell the story. And it was a reversal of fortune, as Roseanne says, a boomerang moment. Everything that was going one way turns around and comes back and goes the other way. Everything they had planned comes back against them. So 17 is the flip, the reversal, the boomerang. It's the 17th book of the Bible. It's Q. When you look at our situation in this modern period, those people that don't understand the Q operation don't understand that it was emblazoned that way for exactly that reason. It's all about the flip, the reversal, the 17th book of the Bible, the Esther moment. And we're right in the midst of that now. All these years, literally for the last 10 years, since Trump came down the escalator, it's all been attack to stop this conservative movement. The Q operation was done to inform and to project certain things and to put certain information into the public persona and to understand context. Right this second, right now, we're in the reversal moment. We've already actually reached the apex and things are coming back. The first arrests. If you've ever watched a boomerang going out in flight and it goes out and it reaches this apex moment, and you'll see a boomerang, it goes out and it goes up. And then it turns around and it comes back. And it's actually slowing a little bit, not in the spinning, but in its flight. And then it gains speed as it comes back down and comes on its return side. That's where we are right now as the arrests occur, including Gitmo. By the way, Gitmo had a storm the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That was came right over the top of it there, and everybody was all concerned. Oh no, it's going to be destroyed. How are we going to send anybody to Gitmo, etc.? I said, relax. It's built for Cat 7. Now things like the movie theater, they actually have a movie theater with actually movie theater seats. It's outside because the island, that area is a true desert, almost no rain every year. And so they have the movie theater outside that you go to watch movies. Well, the chairs got turned over a couple of times and the screen got torn up a little bit, etc. You had a little bit of things dusted up there. The actual facility itself able to handle a Cat 7 storm. And by the way, all of the FEMA ships that were intended for us, by the way, can be taken to Gitmo. They built amazing concrete piers, pilings that can accommodate all of those ships and a few more in the harbor next to Gitmo, and they're set up to handle a Cat 7 storm. So much more powerful than this Cat 5 that just went through there, even though the storm that came across there was the third strongest tropical hurricane on record ever. So pretty powerful. Whoever wanted to engineer that to do whatever, if you wanted to test the facility, make sure everything was good, well, it's sound, it's still there. Gitmo awaits. The diners are assembling. It's about to be epic. And so in this moment we're in, you're now at that point in the narrative where we're already past the apex moment. And you'll see these amazing, dramatic arrests of people and them going to Gitmo the information about the 2020 election.
It's not over yet.
The national emergency, yeah. But 2020, it's not over yet. And by the way, I wasn't lost on me. I love that Nino shirt. All the hand wringing. Nino. Jen has them over on her site, by the way. It's pretty fun. And that was Barbara, the donkey lady, when she was talking to Nino when he was fretting and fussing, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And Barbara, because Nino's a recovered of alcoholic, drug abuser, things like that. He talks about it very openly. And so he has this thing where he'd be hand wringing. We did the Nino's Cremo, okay.
Hand wringing, yeah. Hand wringing.
With his boxing gloves on and all that. There's only 500 jars of that out there, by the way. Those people that have those will be fun for, generations.
I can never get any. It was always sold out. I wanted to hold that up and say.
Well, it was a very high-end, a really high-end cream. It wasn't just the garbage stuff. It was very expensive, and I got a great deal on it. It actually sold for people that were getting it elsewise. I think it sold for like $125 a jar, and we got a deal on 500 of them. And we tried to work a deal. They tried to raise the price up too much, and I thought, no, I just don't want to. I wanted to make a point. We had a lot of fun, but I didn't want to come across like a gouging thing or something like that. And I didn't want to use a lesser quality and all that. So we had some fun with it, but it had a brief lifespan, right? But the hand wringing, well, that is, and you hear right now, by the way, is it going to happen? Is it going to be years from now? Are we, are you sure it's going to happen? I imagine coming up on day that was the day that was decreed by the king, this Esther moment where the Jews and Haman's crowd had it out once and for all. It ended up being 2 days because the king extended it a day for Esther because they hadn't gotten all their enemies completely. This moment, till the day it happened, you didn't know how it was going to come out. You didn't know if somebody might betray you. You didn't know if somebody was going to stand with you all the way or just watch. It came down to that one day. Even right now, look at within the country, you're even today still finding out about secret alliances that are aimed at us as a nation, people behind the scenes. We're still learning it. Just a short while back, through a particular process, we discovered a continuity in government operation that nobody knew about, not even Trump or any of his people through all of the first term and up till now. Nobody knew about this specific, very precise continuity in government operation that was hidden and had people through various agencies of government involved. Not SES. That's the other big monster that we're actually fighting. It's NORAD, nuclear arms, and the control and management and use of them. Versus SES, who claims that authority but doesn't actually have it. It was set up back in Jimmy Carter's era and is tied into the whole Homeland Security thing and all the false flags, by the way. All these false flags you see, those are all SES operations aimed at continuity in government, their way, create a crisis, and then we own the far side of it to manage America within this globalist theme. But we found another group embedded within all of these agencies that had people that was being paid for by all the taxpayers that nobody, even in the highest places, knew existed. That's how deep some of these threats are. And this was a very serious, nasty little operation, and with several hundred people involved. In the course of, taking out USAID and the funding and all sorts of other things, Doge and all sorts of things related to that, this was discovered. And so there's still things that are in the toolbox of enemies of America embedded right there within all these agencies and things that could still cause a problem, disrupt as we go through this boomerang flip reversal moment. All things Q, that is what this administration is all about, returning power and authority back to the people. Trump wants to leave office when he does finally leave with two things accomplished. If you want to wonder why Trump would run for a third term, this would be the context if he's not done. The two most important things that Trump wants to leave as his legacy out in time. He can enjoy his grandkids. He could, enjoy his own properties and buildings and golf and all that, and not have to be president, not have to worry about any of this. But he has set his, you think, oh, he's president, he gets to enjoy all this stuff. Really? What a pain in the ass. You're missing it. He is making his own type of sacrifices, doing what he's doing for his children and grandchildren and children generations removed into the future. The legacy that he wants of his presence in public life is, number one, to return honest elections to the American people. Only American citizens get to vote. Mm-hmm. And their vote is counted as cast. It's not diluted. It's not tossed in the wastebasket and diluted by other people voting or entities voting. Here in Hawaii yesterday, they had a 5-hour hearing over votes from the 2020 election. They're still fighting that.
Wow.
And later elections, 2024, and things like that. They have tens of thousands of votes that were counted that supposedly were mail-in votes, but the post office doesn't have any record of the votes going through the mail system. You know, we take pictures of every piece of mail transiting through the post office everywhere in the world at this time. There is no mail goes into the U.S. postal system. There isn't a picture taken of it at the point of entry into the mail system.
Could be a landmark case.
So here you have, and they're trying to get through the judges and the courts in Hawaii. The courts, the judges won't let you get to examining those things. You're going to have to make it federal, and the Justice Department has been slow or non-existent in entering into these cases and taking over inside the states. So yesterday, there was a whole bunch of stuff that came up, but the one thing that was the biggest sticking point, 5 hours of discussion and arguing, nobody could explain the 19,000 votes that were counted in Hawaii County. They couldn't come up with an answer. And it threw a small population. So when you got 19,000 votes, you can't things going on in the machines. There was other mechanical things that occurred. In fact, you had paper ballots that supposedly came in through the mail system. You had no way to account for where they came from. And then who did that? You know, you think about crimes, you're getting people into office that shouldn't be in office. You know, the governor of Hawaii was sworn in before they'd even officially determined that he won the election.
Wow.
So how does he get sworn in when they haven't even had finished counting? Okay. There's all sorts of issues. And by the way, look at what's going on over in Utah. Oh my gosh. If you haven't seen it, go, everybody here should go pull up the website, utahcorruption.com, utahcorruption.com. And about halfway down the page there, oh, there's two butterflies here, it's beautiful. Halfway down the page at utahcorruption.com, a pro se case brought by Tracy Halverson there in Utah. The, gosh, you're going to come right to me. The complaint is 92 pages. And then the exhibits, there's 92 exhibits. The total filing for the court, took them like 3 days to scan it into the court system, is 3,700 pages. So they served most of the people. There's a couple more to be served. Even right now, there's somebody being served. That's pretty important. They have to take a hand truck to take all the paperwork to serve these people, and 3,700 pages, double-sided print on the pages. Very well documented, where the sitting governor of Utah and the lieutenant governor and sitting U.S. senator who benefited, didn't directly do it. They don't have a Secretary of State in Utah, so the lieutenant governor serves as the person that runs the elections. Well, she's in office with the governor. She replaces the governor if anything happens. The governor, Cox, had been the lieutenant governor in a prior administration, so he knows how the system works. And in this thing, he didn't win at the convention. You have a caucus, people's houses. They decide who's going to go represent every neighborhood in the state at the state conventions run by, it's an official state function for each party. And then at the, with facilities that the state provides, et cetera. At the state convention, the state Republican convention, then all of the delegates vote. And if you get more than 60% of the delegates vote, you're automatically moved straight to the statewide ballot. If you get less than 60%, you and the person closest to you in this contest go on a primary ballot to decide who is going to be the official representative of the Republican Party or the Democrat Party or Independent Party. On the
Now this is phenomenal. It says this action targets a racketeering enterprise within Utah, orchestrated by defendants including Governor Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. Wow, to manipulate Utah's election law. Wow.
It is a civil RICO, and it's got a lot of it's got so many crazy wild things. The big thing is that the sitting Governor Cox, coming into the 2024 election cycle, didn't get the majority vote of the Republicans at the convention. Another candidate by the name of Phil Lyman, who has a history, is pardoned by Trump on a deal with BLM and all sorts of bizarre stuff. At the convention, Phil Lyman got like 67% of the vote. Another candidate got almost 70% of the vote for a Senate position. And so they would go on the general ballot as the Republican candidates against whoever the Democrats brought in on the general ballot for the fall election, automatically, because they had over 60% of the delegate vote at the state Republican convention. Well, the lieutenant governor and governor couldn't have that because they're in office right now. The sitting governor didn't even get, I don't think he got even 20% of the vote. It was some ridiculous low number. And Phil Lyman's people got over 60, got 67%. So with that in mind, the governor's out as the Republican candidate. Now, he could get on the ballot if he had like 28,000 signatures to put him on the ballot. So they went out and got supposedly 28,000 signatures. And that's another story in itself, because people said you never got those legitimately. The company that was hired for $1 million to go out and get these signatures was actually under investigation at the time for falsifying signatures on ballot measures, on campaign measures. So the legislature in Utah took 10% of that 28,000, did an exam, and it was so horrid as to whether the signatures were valid or not that they came to the conclusion that almost certainly they did not have enough signatures for Governor Cox to be on the ballot at all, let alone enough signatures to, it wasn't legit. Well, what the lieutenant governor did is she put the sitting Governor Cox on the ballot as the Republican candidate. And Phil Lyman, who won the convention, and should have been on the general ballot as the Republican candidate, was not on it. And they said it's because of this 28,000 signatures, which they didn't actually have 28,000. It was all a ruse by a crooked company. And since then, the people in that company have pled guilty to forgery and falsehood within the stuff on a previous signing campaign. They've never been prosecuted, charged, anything with the one where the legislature looked at it and said that almost certainly Cox didn't have enough signatures. Even if Cox had enough signatures, which he didn't, to be placed on the ballot, he couldn't be placed on the ballot as the Republican candidate for governor, because Phil Lyman won that. But the lieutenant governor placed him and herself on the ballot as the Republican candidates because they were already in office as the candidates, and pushed Phil Lyman off the side.
The Republicans in Utah, because remember how they booed Mitt Romney, and now Romney's gone? Oh,
yeah.
They screwed up bad.
Well, and this is kind of a legacy in many people's minds of the, Romney enterprise, which in this lawsuit, Tracy is calling a racketeer, influence, corrupt organization. They worked together, along with the judges, by the way, who wouldn't hear the cases properly, to protect the person placed on the ballot as the Republican nominee for governor and lieutenant governor. And then he didn't actually do stuff proactively like the governor and lieutenant governor did, but he was a beneficiary. Senator Curtis got into office. He also didn't get enough votes to be placed on the ballot as the Republican nominee. So with that in mind, they ran a criminal enterprise. It really was criminal to put these people on the ballot as the Republican candidates, and people going to vote, they see him as, and by the way, Trump endorsed Cox, even though Cox had not lawfully won the process, the nomination process at the state convention. So Phil Lyman's people, I was one that asked Phil, would he run for governor in Utah? And we kind of wrestled through it, and then he finally said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. He had already talked with a few people, but he hadn't made the decision. We spent a long day kind of going through all the logistics before he decided to throw his hat in the ring and go for it. And so I felt a little bit, I need to stay on this. And then they had it stolen from him, not just once at the state convention, but again with this write-in campaign run by a crooked organization. And then the legislature not enforcing that the governor's group clearly, as they said, he didn't have enough valid signatures to have the 28,000 he claimed was needed to get him on the ballot, let alone be the Republican nominee. But this lieutenant governor, if you get to the core, the nexus, the worst of the worst, she's the one that ran a crook. She knew that she couldn't do this, and she did it anyway, put herself and the governor on as the Republican candidate. She controls how the ballots are set up in Utah, and she created a fictitious, fraudulent ballot, mailed it out, and the rest is history. But Phil Lyman, just to give you an idea how much backing he had, they did a write-in campaign where you could write on the ballot, other than what was offered to you, write in a candidate. And so over 200,000 people wrote Phil Lyman's name as the person for governor. 200,000, that's the largest write-in ballot campaign ever in U.S. history.
Oh my God!
For that kind of an office.
There's somebody in the chat that said the citizens of Utah fought hard for Lyman and Staggs to get him into office. There's even a rally this weekend. We won't stop fighting. That's awesome.
Well, and let me just say this. So, and this goes to all of your listeners here, including you guys. The RICO lawsuit that Tracy Halverson has put together, this 3,700-page behemoth, unbelievable, beautifully written. It's set up so that not only citizens of Utah, but any citizen of the United States, even if you're not a voter, can be included as a plaintiff in this case. Wow. It's set up to be a class action. So as of yesterday morning, I think they had about 3,000 people that had signed on to the class action. And to be included as plaintiffs in this case. Now, the reason that's really important is this. She's going to be filing something in the next few hours that brings in the United States government as a plaintiff in the case. And the reason is because the governor of Utah is out all over the world making alliances with other countries with these trade agreements as though he's president. He's, the sister cities and inland port stuff and all that. Right. He's doing all sorts of stuff. And part of the deal was, in fact, why did the cabal, if you will, that hidden hand that's been running politics in Utah for so long, why are they so adamant they had to have Cox? Because Cox was the guy that was going to bring the Olympics to Salt Lake City again. And they created this inland port, and they're got taxing authorities and all sorts of stuff that voters can't even vote on. It's just automatically done. And they had to have Cox because he knew the plan doing it for all these billionaires that are behind the scenes wanted another Olympics. And going to be the governor, and Phil Lyman wasn't in the same mode to tax all of the citizens of Utah with all this extra special stuff to do this and hijack a bunch of land for the facilities and everything else. He was a real threat. So they had to get Lyman out of here and get Cox in. And that's the context. It was all about a land grab, money grab, federal money, international money, et cetera, for their next Olympics project, which of course Romney was a key part of last time. And so this RICO, all of these people were working in collusion to make sure that Cox won this election. That Trent Stagg was going to be their senator. Or, you know, he was a threat to their senator, which was Curtis, and the operation there. And so at the end of the day, it has national implications. So therefore, because this was something that is taking U.S. taxpayer money and has national, international implications for every citizen of the United States in this statewide election, every citizen of the United States has a place to be a plaintiff in this case, in this class action. So we've got 3,000 people already signed up to be on the class action. And you don't even have to be a voter. And the reason is because a lot of people don't vote anymore because they think it's so rigged, it's so crooked. Why would you vote? Because the machine's going to do what it wants anyway. Al Capone and his crew are going to win no matter how you vote because they've got control of the election booth, the judges, the politics, everything else. So if you're just an American citizen and you're pissed off about the way that the elections have been run and the way your money is being spent and the obligations as a taxpayer, et cetera, you can be on this suit. And so we all should be. And it's a class action. And here's the cool part. So what they do, if you're a pro se litigant, if you come in, you don't have a judge. I mean, you don't have a lawyer, bar association accredited lawyer. If you come in and try to represent yourself, then the courts in Utah have a special rule that you have to first be cleared as having a correct, legitimate case by a magistrate. A magistrate is, you know, almost just a referee in these cases. You don't actually get to a real judge. This is a federal lawsuit. This isn't a state lawsuit. This is a federal lawsuit.
Wow.
RICO lawsuit. So, but what they do is anybody that comes in that's a pro se, they say, well, because you're not an attorney, we got to make sure you're crossing the T's, dotting the I's, all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. And you can never get out of magistrate hell. It's part of their racket in Utah. That's the reason why things stay corrupt and crooked. It's an internal rule in Utah. So what Tracy did, she put in the way this is set up in the federal system, also that any U.S. citizen, as well as Utah citizen voters, as well as the U.S. government, can enter this claim, this case as a claimant, as a plaintiff. And so now she's requesting that the U.S. government enter through the Justice Department for its own representation, but also as a pro se, she cannot represent anybody else because she's not an attorney. So the class, all of the people that sign on to be plaintiffs in this case, the other claimants, have to be represented by an attorney, and it has to be a U.S. attorney because it's in federal court. So Pam Bondi is going to have to assign an AG to this case to represent the class, the 3,000 people and growing, plus the U.S. itself in this case in court, because Tracy can't. And what happens then is the rule inside of Utah saying that if it's a pro se case, it goes into magistrate hell and they can just manage it and play around with it for decades. You never get to an actual judge. You never get outside of their little machine. In this case, what happens is Now you have a bar authorized member attorney. They can't keep it in magistrate hell. It has to go to a U.S. judge, federal judge, and it gets outside of their rules. As soon as the U.S., as soon as Pam Bondi assigns an AG to this case to represent the United States and or the plaintiffs in the case, you're out of magistrate hell, and they're in trouble because now they can't play their games with you. And she did put an injunction barring them from just assigning this to a magistrate. That's in there right now, and they ignored it and assigned it to a magistrate. So the reason why everybody should be on this case is that, you know, this is already one of the largest cases of its type with a class action in the U.S., okay? But I believe before we're done, it's not just going to be 3,000. It's going to be 10 times the number. It might be, look, they had 200,000 people in Utah. All you people in Utah that wrote in Phil Lyman's name, all of you people should be on this case. This is for you. Hundred thousand people, just those on this case, let alone everybody else around the country, because everybody in the country is affected by this. He's out. The governor, who is not legitimately the governor of Utah, is out making international agreements on all of our behalf, and he's there through fraud. Okay, on multiple levels, and the senator, the lieutenant governor, other people down through the ranks. If you don't win this one, I don't know when you'll get another case as clear as this ever again. It's you know, life or death for the political health, representative health of Utah. This is the one. You know, either you win this one or you'll never get another chance in your lifetime again. And if you can't win in the courts, if you can't win in the legal arena, what's left for people to get rid of a tyrannous government? You know, it's tyranny when they can pull off whatever they want. You can go to convention. Part of the reason the convention is set up the way it is, Michael, is if you have the caucuses in the houses and they vote a delegate at the neighborhood level, you know, people invite everybody over to their house, they have a caucus, they elect a delegate from the neighborhood to represent them at the state convention. So there was 4,000 people at the state convention. All those people elected within the caucus system in Utah, communities all over the state. They go to the state convention, a facility that the state puts up. They spend travel money, hotel money, plus the night that they did their caucus. They prepare by talking to the candidates. They spend, you know, hundreds of hours each preparing to go to this convention. And then they're there and they have a vote, and the law in Utah is if you get 60% or more of the vote at the convention from the delegates, you're the automatic candidate. You go straight on to the general ballot for the fall election. When that didn't happen for Phil Lyman, he didn't, you know, he put a lot of campaign money, and his donors put a lot of campaign money into the caucus system and into the state convention to win the party nomination. That costs real money, time, everything, to then be the one that goes on the general ballot. When they did what they did and ignored the state convention against the state law and went through this other system, getting the 28,000 votes to put them on the ballot in the fall election, then frauded everybody that they were the Republican. Now, they could be put on the ballot, but not as, if they'd had 20,000, which they didn't have, but not as the Republican candidate. They'd just be on there as their own independent thing. They were put on as the Republican candidates and pushed the people that were legitimate candidates off to the side like they didn't even exist, okay, and ran an illegal election. Totally illegal by Utah law, totally illegal. And when you complain to the courts, the judges are looking at the sky, they're counting sheep, you know, asking what's on the menu for lunch, whatever. They won't even let you get in through court, okay, because it's a fixed system. It's their own little cabal. That's why it's a RICO. They were racketeering to engineer how the election was going to be conducted illegally. And so within that context, numbers mean things, even to the federal government, Pan Bondi, et cetera. If you don't have enough numbers, even 3,000, which is an astonishing number of people who have already signed up in the little bit of time that this has been out there, a lot of people don't understand the magnitude of this particular case. You get 30,000 signatures. You get 300,000 signatures. How's the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, and everybody else going to ignore this? Okay, the will of the people is being denied. I think that numbers do matter in this, and that you have to make known decisively that we're not going to be shut down, put away, ignored. And even now in the courts in Utah, they know that 3,000 number. It's only been out for 2 weeks. It only was filed 2 weeks ago. We haven't even got all the main players served yet. They're doing some of that today, right now. There's 12 people named in the lawsuit right now. The number of people, as they find out, that are plaintiffs in this case is going to continue to go up. And they're going to have federal representation from the Attorney General's office for the class, all of those 3,000 people and growing. And at that point, the judges, the magistrate system in Utah, you can't say, oh, it's just a pro se person, so we can ignore this. As soon as you have a U.S. AG assigned to this case, and they're a member of the bar, which they're going to be, it has to leave the magistrate system, go straight to a federal judge, and the rest is just a matter of timing, because the case is very well documented, very well put together, you know, it's going to go to a jury. And by the way, if an AG is assigned to the case, this is a really interesting little point. If an attorney from the U.S. Attorney's Office is assigned to the case, in the course of their work through discovery, investigation, depositions, evidence gathering, if they learn of anything that constitutes a federal crime, then, or even a local, by the way, they have to refer that to the criminal division for investigation. So to the extent that these things were crimes, which they were, as soon as they have guilty knowledge through being involved in the case and they see evidence of a crime, they have to refer it to the criminal division of the Justice Department for criminal investigation and action. Criminality is involved here. It'll get there. It's only a matter of time. So you're not just going to have the civil RICO for damages, but the criminal RICO. Not just a criminal for one or two little people, because it was a corrupt organization. You're dealing with Al Capone's buddies. They will be under a criminal RICO conspiracy and indicted as such, and that's going to be epic. And this is the opportunity to win back Utah for Utahns. And then we have states, other states that are looking at how this action has been developed and written up, and they have similarities in other states that are, you know, going to be happening too. In fact, you know, one other thing, Oregon, the person who ran for governor last time around and who had the election stolen from him in various ways, on the way that the campaign money was brought in, she filed quo warrantos, where the people in office had to prove that they were there legally. It's a particular type of filing. The courts in Utah just shined them on, wouldn't do it. In Oregon. Oregon laws written in a way that to keep you from getting into any court in any meaningful way, or to the Supreme Court. And they reread the rules, so they understood, oh, actually what they're saying you have to do, you don't have to do based on the way the law is set up. So the courts wouldn't let them force these people in office to answer the quo warranto. Are they there legally, legitimately, according to constitutional law? They filed in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court docketed the case about a month ago. So there's a Oregon quo warranto case before the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, that is docketed. Now, to just get on the docket is like 1 in 1,000 get there that file. But getting past the docket and actually going to a hearing is even more difficult to get past that. So they've still got huge hurdles to get through. But the fact that they got docketed at all means that the court saw the legitimacy, the clerk saw the legitimacy of the case, and it had checked all the boxes to be able to be docketed. Oregon's in play over the way that their governor got to office. This hearing yesterday in Hawaii, some of that, they're looking at similar potential for legal action that would be a RICO similar to what's going on in Utah, occurring in Hawaii. There's other cases that are looking at this in the same way, and I don't want to name all of them because they're less, developed, but they're coming. That case in Utah is the framework for other similar types of actions, tuned precisely to the illegality of these groups and the way they operate in collusion in other states. So anyway.
Unbelievable, Juan. This has been an epic show. I think this is the best yet. So it's not over yet.
Well, let me.
And you're proving.
I apologize. You know what?
That's true. Even more so
you're,
now.
You're a good guy.
I'm glad we brought this up. It's good.
Well, okay. So I got one and one more thing.
Awesome. Okay.
And also, by the way, and it also does this. It slices, it dices, it cubes. Tina Peters.
Oh, please. Yeah.
In fact, I'm doing Tina Peters' show later today, by the way.
Really?
So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. In fact, I'm doing it with Tracy Halverson because her case has overtones into Colorado. 2020, it's not over yet. You know what? You know what we got to do? I got to send the website, Jen's website, thejennifermack.com. We got to send it to all these politicians that are named in these suits. You know why? They need Nino's hand cream. I probably better go out and get it again. It's really high quality stuff. They need the Nino shirt. Okay. Okay. Hand wringing.
Make a little money off of it. Heck, why not?
That's right.
But I saw that all your silver coins are almost all gone. You've only got one left. I'm so glad I got them. Wow.
Well, the only one out there right now is the Gitmo coin, and we have quite a bit coming out of that.
You better get it.
It's getting good. I didn't move the prices up when we had that spike the other day because I knew it was going to come back down. I told people that too, and in some of the shows, that I didn't expect it to stay up there this round when it punched through 50. That it would go through it decisively, but would probably settle down. It's going much higher. 70 is the next real checkpoint, and it's continuing to power through. So the Gitmo coins that are there on allpatriots at gumroad.com.
Allpatriots. I got all of those coins, and they're all worth like 2-3 times more than what I bought them for. Wow.
Well, we have just a handful of the 2023s, and they're radically up there. And somebody just told me the other day that they had actually were trading at the dealers higher than what we had them on the site.
Sure,
we didn't realize we had them there for that.
More.
But anyway,
more.
And all of them tell a story together. And I didn't even keep. We sold all of the coins we had. Had to go into my own handful of coins and give them out on the Melania coins.
Good job on you.
But anyway, no, I wanted to say this one thing. So, and I apologize for running long on this, but I think this is a super important point I mentioned the other day on a couple of shows, but I want to make sure we have your listeners understand this. Trump said, you don't have to trust that I'm saying this. Trump himself said the other day in an interview that he was getting ready to sign a executive order concerning paper ballots. And he went into a long diatribe. It was actually over the stuff in Ukraine and like that. And one of the reporters asked him a question. He says, well, actually, this isn't on point, but I'm going to answer this question anyway. And he says, I'm getting ready to sign an executive order for paper ballots and to stop all mail-in ballots in the 2026 election. Now, he went, it's several minutes long, and I've handed around a lot. I think it's over at a number of the sites. I think I maybe even sent it to you, and so everybody should go look at this. In the course of doing that, from our friends inside the administration, I had back to January 21st when I had a private meetings and invited a bunch of people out in D.C. after the inauguration, had asked several of our people that are, these are their skill sets from their work history like that, to write an executive order concerning hand count paper ballot counted where cast, the whole schmear. The one that I was aware of that had been in play back to when Trump was still a candidate in the summer of 2026, it was a first, version, and it was pretty weak, and it didn't actually say what it needed to say. So I'd asked some of the folks with me there if they couldn't work through that, and we did as a group, and came up with a 17-page proposed executive order concerning hand count paper ballot counted where cast precincts 1,600 or less. And at the very outset of that executive order, in order to implement it, it included a national emergency related to elections, so that you had executive authority, or in some ways of saying it, commander-in-chief authority, to control things down below the federal level all the way into the state and county and municipal level. And the reason is because it's at the county level that people get on as a registered voter. And we know that the voter rolls are completely corrupt, can't be trusted, and they can't really fix them with any system that's out there the way it is right now. So you have to essentially wipe the slate clean and start over. So this proposed executive order, 17 pages long, and that was just by accident, actually. As concise as we could make it was then, we put it out publicly. You can go find it. It's out there, the version that we came up with. And then was on the president's desk. No machines allowed, strictly a paper ballot, hand counted. We understand that it's like 80% of what we have there, maybe 90 is what's going to be used in what the president's legal team have gone through and come up with their own version of this. We just proposed that here's the things we think need to be in here and why, et cetera. So we'll be watching to see what it is, but the president says he's going to sign an executive order, and people that we have as contacts say it's pretty close to what we had submitted as a group. And he's going to put that out there. At the moment that he puts that out there, and he said he's days away from doing this, that's like declaring war in itself on the people running the illegal side of these elections, because they won't be able to pull off the frauds that they've been doing within the election system. It's like a death knell for the rhinos and Democrats that have been doing all of their scamming and like that, and it'd be run, supervised at the federal level by troops if necessary. And the president, when he does that, you have to stop and slow down. This is where it relates to Tina Peters. As a prelude, the first thing he does before he implements the executive order, or simultaneous with it, is declares a national emergency related to elections. And then within that national emergency, he implements that here's how we're going to run the 2026 election. It doesn't matter what, and by the way, because it's in the context of a national emergency, no judge at the state or federal level can stop him. You wanted a guy that operates as king? Well, it's actually not king, it's commander-in-chief. So he takes control of the elections as the executive to run a fair election in 2026, and mandates from the federal level exactly how that's going to be conducted, and no judge can stop him. There's no federal injunction or anything like that that's going to stop him. And so that's just going to be wasted time and energy to try and do that. Won't happen. And within the context of a Tina is a witness. Tina is a witness on how these elections have been being frauded. Knowledge into the machines, knowledge into the various ballot things that are being done. Within that context, even though she could be released on whistleblower stuff, taken into federal custody, the state would still have a case to bring forward later, blah, blah, blah. There's all sorts of reasons why, she was supposed to be out on her birthday. There was actually 2 different agreements that occurred, and she was going to be out just before her birthday or right on her birthday. And both times people inside the Justice Department blocked that, and it didn't happen. And so then there's been this thing where it looked like within the courts, the habeas corpus thing was going to get acted on by a judge and still in play and could happen any day. But it, becoming more and more questionable that would happen. Well, Trump said he's going to sign this executive order very shortly, days away, according to his words, not mine. Then when he does that, almost certainly in order to pull off what he's going to pull off, he has to declare a national emergency within the election. I believe that it's quite likely, because Trump has said 3 times now, set Tina Peters free, get her out of there. Okay. That simultaneous with that, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there's guys waiting at the door right there at the prison to walk in a few seconds later and go take physical custody of Tina Peters and get her out of the hellhole. But that would be something that I think we should expect to happen in the context of the declaration of a national election emergency and the executive order. And by the way, the last executive order in the elections was Executive Order 107, signed at 107 in the afternoon Eastern Time by the president on March 25th of 2025. Now, that executive order was about the states and the counties cleaning up the voter rolls prior to the 2026 election, gave them 6 months to do that. Well, September 25th, none of the states had done anything of meaning. None of the counties had done anything of meaning. They thumbed their noses. They gave the finger to Trump and the executive order. So the context for an emergency, a national emergency, and another executive order going down into the counties and the cities on the way the elections are going to be held, let alone the state level, is in the context that they thumbed their nose at him. So he's going to come back and, be far more forceful and proactive to get done what needs to be done because they ignored the last executive order. And it'll be interesting to see what number gets assigned to this executive order. It'll probably have a significant meeting also, including the date that he signs it, going to war with the monsters. So anyway, we're watching close, and that could be how it happens for Tina. We don't know. I just know that we're all in prayer to get the right outcome for Tina. And every day in there, she is a political prisoner. At 70 years old. Come on, man. She never even had a parking ticket, speeding ticket. Okay. Shoot, I got a wall plastered full of them. Okay. I don't even know how somebody goes through life without getting some kind of a traffic infraction. I drive a lot, but it's just so easy to pick one up.
And unfortunately, her son, Navy SEAL, died in a parachute accident. So, I mean, she's.
Well, let me just add this. Her son. This isn't public, really. She's talked about it a little bit in private. Her son was involved in some work going after child traffickers and assisting in some of that work. Wow. And he had a double parachute failure.
That's insane. He's on the parachute team.
Yes, he was, he had a very good record. He's in a demonstration team.
Yep.
To have 2 chute failures. Somebody's had, I think he had 3,000 jumps or whatever. There's just no way. This was, somebody did something. And
I've said that for a
you
long
know,
time. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So and her son, you know,
She
uh,
doesn't go there. She's very humble about it, but yeah, we can say it.
yeah. Well, she doesn't. Let me say it this way: she's not playing on that for some kind of,
Right.
you know, she's not merchandising her son and what happened to him. She's um, not playing it with that way. You know, she's trying to do things based on their merit without, you know, pulling that heartstring or whatever. Like you should give her a pass because of that. But she doesn't have to. We can. This is atrocious what these people have done. So by the way, don't think for a second that any of those monsters in Colorado that did all sorts of chicanery to make her uh, the bad person and draw attention off themselves is going to get away with this before God in His heaven. They will not skate free of this. They will. You know, it's easy to dish out. Let's see how they take it when the tables are flipped and they're on the receiving side of what's about to come. So
They'll be crying. That's the way they usually do it.
yeah, yeah.
Begging for mercy.
Michael, I gotta tell you,
Epic.
I apologize because I always get going so much, and you always have such great things to add in, and you get me going, and I didn't really let you chime in enough because there's a lot of times when we have an exchange
This might
and I
be the
get stuff
record
out
show
of
for
you
you. I don't
that
know.
is fun. Well, but I, you know, we ought to flip it sometime, and I get to interview you, and I
Yeah,
shut up and listen to
fun.
you. You're too gentlemanly.
I'll get my boots out. And,
You know, well, by the way, you had it at the beginning of the show for a second or two. There's stuff going on in Brazil. I mean, I'm getting live reports from my guys that are down there in the midst of this. I mean,
oh,
talk
wow.
about a war. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh! I mean, talk about bringing back memories. I was just sitting there. You know, they had the reports were 60 some odd people killed, 80 injured or whatever, and it was way higher than that. That was, you know, probably easily double that number, and it's still going. And it's while we also have stuff going on. You know, we got 10,000 guys ready to go right into Caracas right now. We've got all of the aircraft, munitions, carrier task force. You know, we're ready to go at it, and it's going to be epic. And so the situation in Brazil is pretty wild.
It's going to be similar to what's going to happen in our cities. I think that's what I was talking about. Because Bolsonaro
and, you know,
was basically, you know, he had his election stolen from him just like Trump did.
Yes, and by the same group.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know that.
You know, because it is the same group. Yeah, the same group out of Venezuela that was transplanted into Serbia, which included, by the way, the CIA side of the operation, the MI6 and 5 side of the operation, FBI here. They're all collusive, working with the vote cartel, the criminal vote. You know, you got drug runners, you got rum runners. Last century, you got all these things. Well, these are the vote runners, and they're trading in illegal votes because illegal votes are worth more than counterfeit currency. Counterfeit votes are worth more than counterfeit currencies because they control the currencies, right? And the spending and everything else. So the people that we have in physical protective custody here in the U.S. right now who stole the 2020 vote and other votes around the world, they say they actually, in being interviewed by a person that everybody in this audience would know instantly by name, when that person was interviewing him last summer, the person asked him, well, how many countries have you done this in besides the United States? And they said 71 was their personal count. 71 countries. They had flipped the vote, got people into office who weren't the vote of the people. And includes places like South Korea, you know, Brazil, Mexico, all sorts of places around the planet. But they moved from Venezuela as it went into chaos back in 2018 and 19. They moved to Serbia. And the next location, because they're setting up a new operations center in Serbia, which, by the way, the building they're in is half owned by John Brennan. Think about that. Brennan, CIA, former CIA at that time, he is half owner of the building they move into in Serbia with the wealthiest man in Serbia,
Wow.
this billionaire. And so they co-own this building with all the servers that's being used to cook votes all over the planet. But they had to test the system. Do you know where they tested the system first time out? South Africa. Okay, so Ramaphosa, remember Ramaphosa? He's the president of South Africa who came to the Oval Office with a bunch of his delegation. They're all there in the Oval Office, and Trump pulls out the films of the white farmers at the funerals and says, "You're promoting murder of people so you can take over their land, steal their land from them. Is that true?" And Ramaphosa says, "This is all news to me. I've never seen this before. I don't know what you're talking about." Well, bullshit. He knows exactly what they're talking about. And so he was in office through fraud, just like Maduro in Venezuela. So now Maduro, the Justice Department calls Maduro the head of a drug crime terror family being run out of Venezuela, the president of Venezuela, and that he's there through vote fraud. So our Justice Department, because it affects, drug trafficking into America and other crimes against America and other countries in the world, issued a indictment and arrest warrant for Maduro. And then they put the largest ever bounty in U.S. history on somebody for information helping him to get them arrested and prosecuted. So they put a $50 million bounty on Maduro, the president of Venezuela. And that's what all of this preparation is, to go to war, to get Maduro out of Venezuela and all of his people out of the government, and to help return the government of Venezuela back to the people. Venezuela, by the way, just so you know, it's the richest country in the world with oil, richer than the countries in the Mideast. And they're in Venezuela, as the government collapsed, one of the people that I interviewed related to all of this a while back, he said, at first, everybody's pets, their dogs and cats, remember, this is a wealthy country, started disappearing because the people were eating them for food. People were grabbing any pet off the street they could get for food. Then it was the rats. They started disappearing, and then the mice.
Jeez.
Because the people were starving that bad. Just horrors for Venezuela. And in that environment, they moved their main headquarters to Serbia. Maduro's presiding over that. The drug gangs, the stories are just unbelievable. Reminds me of other stuff that happened back in the 80s. And so we're ready to go in there and take out Maduro. Well, next on the list, Trump has already referred Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, to the Justice Department for similar investigation as being there through election fraud. The first election that they ran controlled from Serbia after they got embedded over there was the South African election that put Ramaphosa into office. He's illegitimate, just like Maduro is illegitimate. So they're going to put a bounty, indict him and put a bounty on him, and next stop, Africa. And that's where a lot of the criminality going on in the mining and like that, these billionaires that are protected in South Africa.
Yeah,
they're the ones that were up there.
Show that disclosed that. Oh my God. Wow.
Well, I mean, the stuff going on in the Congo,
Yeah, you've been on that for a while too. Good job.
Yeah, and Iran's tied into that. So Iran is in collusion both in Venezuela and in South Africa with what's going on in those operations, with millions and millions dead, let alone all the rest of the trauma. So when Trump bombed the nuclear bunkers in Iran, it wasn't to save and protect Israel, it was to save and protect the world. And it was outside their skill sets. They did what they did at some street level, we went in and did what nobody else in the world could do, which was take out their nuclear development capability at that level. So anyway, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. So
Yeah,
I apologize.
that's a great
I
ad.
get into these things. It's hard for me to stop.
So much to talk about. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing all you did. It's unbelievable. And Jennifer Mack, I've been posting. We've been posting in the chat, in the screen, and so forth. So I showed
Go
it.
get your Nino shirt. Everybody should have a Nino shirt for Nino.
So whenever Juan's on, you got to throw this shirt on so you get the feel of it. Get in the mode. Get in the mood.
Well, somewhere down the road, what's going to be so fun is, and even in your situation, the number of people that we're having, the podcasts and doing stuff. We had a lot of really great people, 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, 5 years ago. There's very few that have been able to stand the test of time. And you're still there. Nino has been around for quite a while now and is still there. We got a handful of great people that have stayed true all the way through. I have noticed a handful that have kind of lost their way because they're getting frustrated because things haven't happened as quick or in the way they expected it to go. And so Trump failing us this, and Trump should have done this other thing, and he should have done it on time. Like that was, you know what? This is a bigger war than most people realize. There's a lot more going on, and in the context of everything, Trump's doing a great job. It's amazing. If you stand back and look at it, it's a sight to behold. And the first huge one, he wants honest votes. That's the first thing is legacy. The second thing is honest money. And so the way we handle our elections and then the way that our money is denominated as a treasury operation, not a international Federal Reserve banker, shyster, City of London operation. And that's the next phase in the war. But we got some cleanup to do first to get rid of the boat stuff. Venezuela's core to that, the drug running, the money laundering, the black bag operations, including by people within our own government and other nation state level stuff tied to the elections. So that's next up. I expect action according to the president very shortly, within days. When he signs the executive order, I believe he has to sign the national emergency at the same time, just prior to it. And, please God, and Tina gets out of jail right then.
Definitely, I think it's going to make some things happen pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Starving's not going to be good.
No, that's for sure. So.
Right,
anyway.
Juan, thanks so much.
All right. I always appreciate it. Thanks, Mike, for letting me kind of get all these things out. I think our shows, when we talk, at least I get more of the stuff out that I'm trying to get out in one stream than I necessarily get some of the other opportunities that I get to be out there. So I always
well, it's like it was pent up. You let it all out. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. So, and everybody out there in the audience, two things. Nino. And to Nino. Hurry up.
Okay.